Simon, hello.
Fergus.
It's been a while. How long has it been?
Did I
Sam's
miss
30th.
Sam's
It
30th.
was Sam's 30th.
It was. Sam
I was in
Cornforth,
black
the
tie with
legend
Addy
that
Powers
is.
on.
The legend. I think there's quite a lot of Adidas at that
I
show.
bet you're pleased it was a pair of Addy Powers, actually. But there we go. There we go. It has been a while, but how is everything your end? You're busy at the moment, aren't you?
I'm very busy. Mid-challenge,
Yes.
which I'm sure we'll come on to.
We will.
And yeah, hectic lifestyle.
Yes.
But I think we share that. I think that's a mutual...
Travel's the key.
Yeah.
Travel is the key to having a hectic lifestyle, but to not having a hectic lifestyle, travel is actually the key that closes that door, ironically. Yeah, no, I've definitely felt the burden of... It's funny because whenever anyone asks me about it, it's always, no, it's okay as long as you're structured and manage it.
Yeah.
It's fine until it isn't, and then it's very not fine.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff people don't see with travel, right? It's intense. Early mornings, late nights. There's a lot that people don't see that goes on behind the scenes.
And one delay can derail a week. It's what I've found.
A month.
Planning everything to the minute, and then BA come along and like, oh no, here we go. Still more reliable than trains though. But I think what we'll start with for context is the month that we're in currently, which is November, which is how we first really connected. And I think that was about 2020. I actually think.
Well, I'm actually going to correct you there.
Okay.
You got me into Movember.
Yep.
So we met at a Knocko event.
Yes.
And you were telling me about your challenge, which was the Ben Nevis.
Yes, that would have been 2019 or 2020. I was prepping for that, yeah.
And I was going to join you on that.
Yes.
And then the dreaded COVID hit.
Yes.
And that's where I started my first Movember challenge.
Awesome.
So you were actually the reason that I started doing Movember.
That's very positive to hear. Thank you. And you're still doing Movember 5 years later, which is very exciting. 5 is a nice round number. Six, isn't it?
This is my 6th.
Oh, of course it
so
is.
So it was 2019.
Yes. Yeah, it would have been. Yeah. So I remember the first one because it came from a very... I mean, it's always been a personal cause to you, but I think for both of us, it's been something that's been a really good... I guess the key thing for me with it has always been that it's a great way to reduce the inaccessibility of the topic by adding a layer of humour. That's why they've done so well. The moustache disarms the topic and allows conversations to flow, which is probably how we first got talking in that Knocko event all those years ago. And I remember the key detail we bonded over as well, which I think is an important part of this story, is our love for French bulldogs.
Absolutely.
And I think my pig dog and your Vera are very similar looking little creatures, and little creatures they are.
Yeah.
And that has been a huge part of your messaging ever since, which we'll come on to in more detail. But I think the key thing for us is that we've both, in many ways, had similar experiences in terms of not feeling like we're quite ourselves.
Yeah.
Lent a lot on the companionship of a small French creature that has no ties to France in any way, shape or form, other than they like croissants, is probably the way that I'd structure it. And we've explored how that can be a vehicle for creating positive conversation along the way, which I've really enjoyed personally. I know that you have as well, but it's not without its challenges. So let's start with where we are right now, and then we'll go all the way back.
Yeah.
To quote before the podcast started, you're hanging on by a thread. Why are you hanging on by a thread?
So I am day 34 into a 60-day challenge. It's called the 60-60-60 challenge. I'm running for 60 minutes a day in a 10-kilogram weighted vest. And I'm doing 60 minutes of finding space. So journaling, away from technology, sitting in my own thoughts, testing being bored. I think that's a big, probably topic of conversation. You know, we're all so connected right now. So I wanted to show the different elements of the physicality, you know, and the weight that men are carrying, and that's represented in the vest. And then I also wanted to show the other side of it, that, you know, the parts that we're probably not paying attention to, which is how are we decompressing? How are we stepping away from the connected world that we live in? And by connected, I mean technology.
Yeah.
That I don't think does us many favours. It's great in a lot of senses to do with what we're talking about, you know, sending a message, making a phone call, but I think the actual positive elements of technology and communication are being lost in the social media world.
Yeah, I think we've crossed a bit of a threshold where, I mean, I personally still have a pretty positive relationship with it, but the more I find I'm making an effort at the moment to post more frequently than they have been, the more time I spend posting, the more I get sucked in, and the less of a positive interaction I have with it. Most of my interactions have all been like this one, where social media has connected me to people.
Yeah.
But I do think we've crossed a bit of a threshold where AI implementation, dependency on this, dependency on that has
100%.
it is created the requirement for exactly what you're saying, which is you can't find space accidentally anymore. I think you consciously need to create it. Whereas even until 2-3 years ago, it kind of still happened accidentally. At least in my day-to-day life, I can't speak for everyone.
and I agree, and I think what and I've had a lot of conversations during this, and I'll come back to the challenge in a sec. But during this time, I've had a lot of conversations with people who have said it's inspired them to find a bit of space. But also that they find themselves using technology as a bit of a numbing tool. And it's great that people are able to acknowledge that, but they're sat with girlfriend, wife, kids, whatever, and they're sat on their phone thinking that it's a recovery piece. I'm switching off. You're not switching off.
It's habitual now, isn't it?
And we all come off that technology going, well, what's that actually done for me? And I don't think anybody can answer positively, right? I don't think there is a positive answer to that. And then just to round off the challenge, I'm doing 60 days, so I wanted to extend the conversation. You know, I think Movember, fantastic. We both work with Movember. But I think the reason Movember have been right behind the challenge, by the way, but the reason I wanted to extend it was that, you know, men's mental health isn't a month of the year.
Yeah.
You know, the conversation is constant, and I think that needed to be highlighted that, you know, 60 days and the number 60 comes from the fact that every 60 seconds globally a man will take his own life.
Yeah.
And I mean, we both know how frightening that is.
Yeah.
And how real that number is.
And for context, for anyone listening or watching, just make note of how long this episode is. If you listen to the whole thing, which I hope you do, of course, that will be the amount of men that have died by suicide by the time you've listened to this whole episode, which is probably the starkest statistic for me, because the numbers like that are hard to comprehend until you can kind of comprehend them, funnily enough. But I think the global statistic now is about 560,000 men die by suicide every year around the world. Yeah. That's such a big number, you don't really know what to do with it. Whereas knowing that breaking that down, that's horrifying.
Yeah, and
that really is horrifying.
I am genuinely using that number during this challenge because, you know, there are moments, and you've done these physical challenges where, you know, I'm waking up at 5 a.m. to get ready to run at 6 a.m. You don't want to do it.
No, you don't.
You know, I'm not bouncing into every run. I'm not feeling great. I've got niggles all over me. But there is just something in there that drives you to do it, right? And that number, the pain that some men are in, as we speak, you know, it just far outweighs anything that I'm doing. Yeah.
And it creates conversations for those that might need to be listening, which I think is very, very important. And I think it's important to flag as well, you're not by trade somebody that is essentially trying to reach as many people on the internet as possible, which means that anyone cynical of these sort of challenges, which I think has some credibility these days, can't leverage that against you, because essentially you're working in a tight-knit community for yourself, for the people that are aware of what you're doing, for sort of clients, customers you're working with and all that sort of thing, and they know what you're doing, and it's having an impact in that community, which will have downstream benefits. And the fact that you're getting up and doing that without knowing that it might lead to X opportunity or this at the back end, I think is one of the main reasons I wanted to discuss this in this format, because I think there is a bit of an increase in the cynicism behind these events. I've got a big one coming up next year. It's been something I've been doing for many, many years now, so I'd like to think there's no cynicism, but it has increased. Yeah. And I do think these projects can be massively meaningful. I've had messages that have kind of stopped me in my tracks. I'm sure you've had messages that have stopped you in your tracks.
It's pretty constant at the moment.
Which is great, isn't it?
And it's real.
But it's hard. And I think that's what's really important to flag, is it's hard, because I've only recently stepped back into this world after a bit of a hiatus of 4 years or so, really, because I, ironically, was starting to affect my own mental health with the scale of the challenges. So
Yeah.
I've had 4 years of foundation building to be able to take on the biggest projects I ever will. But now that I've stepped back into that world, it's great to be receiving messages of impact, but you're inadvertently putting yourself in a bit of a emotionally exposed space, aren't you? So how are you doing with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some, you obviously get it from all angles when you're doing a challenge like this. And I don't have a huge following on the internet, but it still comes in.
Yeah.
People see it, people find it, people, on your donation page, you read some of the messages on there and it hits home. And I think the other, the 60-second piece, it's still just a number, right? But when you get messages from people who've experienced suicide within the family or a close friend or, whatever it might be, or they've had their own mental health challenges, it makes it real.
Yeah.
And we've seen high profile people in the press recently who've taken their own lives. And I think the tangible piece is, people can look at a statistic and read it, but until they see something that directly impacts them, it's really hard to change the narrative.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
And
massively.
I think that's what I'm trying to do, is to show almost the light and the dark. The run is in the dark. I'm carrying the weight of what we don't see necessarily that men are carrying, but then also I'm finding space in my life to offset the pressure that we're all under. And I think that's kind of the narrative I want to push. And I've always said doing this, and I've probably said this to you before, if I can change one person's view, or one person goes and has a conversation with a loved one, or goes and sees a therapist, or goes to their doctor, it's kind of job done.
Yeah, job done.
It won't make you stop, but it's kind of job done.
Yeah.
So I think for me that's like the real driver behind it, is trying to like tangibly make the fundraising's great, Movember great, but I think we're now at a point where it's like, what's the action? What we actually doing? We've talked about it for years.
Yep.
What are you physically doing, either in your own day-to-day life, or actually looking out for friends and family? Like, we can all say we're doing it, but are we actually doing it?
Yeah, and it's hard. It is hard. I think that's the key as well. And I think something I always try and highlight is do it when you're feeling good as well as you're not feeling good.
100%.
And I have been so guilty over the past couple of years of slipping into default settings and realising X amount of weeks or months has gone and I haven't been practicing what I preach, to be honest. I've not got in touch with friends that probably could have done with a phone call or whatever it may be, and that's where you have to sort of kick yourself. And as you said, action is the key word now.
Yeah, and it is. Action is, and I think the other thing is like what you're doing for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, we can have tons of conversation, and conversation's great, and I think it would help with this aspect in terms of like, the challenges that we all face in our lives, and we all do. Like, if you don't, you're lying.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, what are those things that you're putting in place intentionally for yourself? And I've talked about like compassionate discipline. Like, discipline's a harsh word, and it scares people. But I think the compassionate discipline element is putting things in place that need an element of discipline is the kindest thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
And that might be finding space. That might be, I'm going to go to the driving range today. Yeah. I'm going to go for that run. I'm going to do that gym session. I'm going to go to that class. I'm going to go for that coffee with the friend. Those are the things that, and the little routines, that you can put into your daily life that become routine. They will help you find the space in life. And I think that's what people struggle with. But on the reverse of that, I ran with a guy in Tenerife, actually, when I was away a few weeks ago, and he said bad things grow in the dark.
Interesting.
And it's a true saying, right? Because the things that creep into our lives that are detrimental to our mental health, if we don't face them and make the positive changes, the negative things will grow pretty quickly. And that kind of struck a chord with me, right? That bad things grow in the dark. And it's true. And it becomes a spiral. And I think that's where I'm edging towards that compassionate discipline thing, that it's not discipline, because that's a huge hurdle for people. If you look at it in a kind way, that putting X, Y, and Z into your lifestyle, it's a kind thing. It makes things easier. It makes you have more space to do the things you want to do, be a bit more clear in the head. I mean, there's tons of analogies, right? But I think that's one that...
I think it was... I can't remember who it was. I think I first heard the phrase from... I think his name's Jordan something. He's the guy that throws something into his ice bath every morning.
Oh, yeah.
In like Minnesota or something. He said... I can't remember the full phrase, but it was something along the lines of discipline is the strongest form of self-love. There's more to that statement, which makes it even more powerful. But I think that as a little aphorism is... That struck a chord with me, because I think what I've struggled with running businesses, training, everything over the past couple of years is doing things that serve no purpose other than to bring me joy or give me a little bit of decompression time. And that can be things like going for a pint with my mate. Rather than going, no, you shouldn't be drinking, you shouldn't be allocating social time, because that misaligns with the discipline of your training for this thing or that thing. At the end of the day, I'm just a media athlete. I'm just doing this shit on the internet. So I don't need to exist within these binary discipline. Like you've said, it's an intimidating word, and I think it's been, well, it can be an intimidating word. It doesn't need to be an intimidating word, but circling right back to the prevalence of technology, I think it's been piggybacked a little bit by certain narratives, which can make it seem a bit more difficult to align yourself with. But discipline ultimately is, I view it as a sort of 3-step process in terms of looking after yourself, whereby you highlight the things that serve you well. You create systems and structures to try and implement them within your context and setting, not trying to mimic somebody else's.
100%.
And then 3, you aim to repeat them as consistently as you possibly can and audit that as you go to try and reduce the friction to be able to implement them. And that's something I try and do, and that's the thing that's helped me the most over the years, because great example is when a flight's delayed, when something doesn't go right. You don't then punish yourself because you haven't been able to do the thing that you said you were going to do at the time you're going to do it, because it's out with your control. And the biggest skill that I've developed through that sort of discipline framework is to be able to forgive myself or pivot or adapt or auto-regulate and then just move forwards, where a little bump in the road isn't going to make me steer off to the side of it. It's just, oh, there we go. Off we move. So first question, and we'll go just let me know which one, and then we'll move on. What has been harder thus far? The 60 minutes of running with a 10-kilo weighted vest, or the 60 minutes of creating space?
That's a good question. Initially, and I knew this would be the case, initially it was the finding space. I didn't know what to do with myself. I'm not a journaler. I've tried. I've tried to be I'm going to journal before bed. I've never been able to do it. So the first 5 to 10, I was you could probably see in the I do a time lapse of the hour. How uncomfortable I was, fidgeting around.
Which is ironic, because 1, you're documenting it, and 2, it means you literally can't access your phone for 60 minutes because they're not in the time lapse. So that's a nice. There you go. That's at the bottom of the framework. It's a great way of removing friction.
It's looking at me. But there were times, you could probably see that I'm uncomfortable. But what it's probably flipped now.
Okay.
The backlog of the run is starting to get me. I'm calling it recovery deficit is getting more and more and more.
It's cumulative fatigue just increasing.
It's just getting. This morning was my worst run You know, somebody said every day seems to be the worst run, but I'm like, well, it's getting progressively
You'll
harder.
have one really good one. I'm over the hump, and
It's
then it'll
getting
be
progressively harder. But there is ups and downs, as you know, in these
Yeah.
challenges. You have some mornings where you feel great, and then others where it's super difficult. And there's probably a metaphor for life in there.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably flipped now. So I'm actually finding the hour. So I'm using like recovery Normatec boots.
Yep.
They massively like help. One, and two, I'm actually now probably writing 3 or 4 pages in a journal a day.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's helping me to like regulate central nervous system. I'm finding it an hour of space.
Are you settled into it now? You think you're not?
I think so.
You're not aggy and twitchy anymore.
Depends on the day.
Okay.
You know, the days where I'm like really fatigued.
I'm asking out of real curiosity here because I've never been
Yeah.
able to be someone that can.
No,
I can create space in remote environments on my own, but I'm confident if I needed to, I could sit and stare at a wall for 60 minutes without losing my mind. But
and again, you know, back to metaphors for life. I think it's day dependent.
Yeah.
You know, if I've had a tough day at work, or something's got to me, or I had a bad run, or I'm feeling overly tired and fatigued, it's tough.
And are you doing it at the end of the day each day?
Try to. It depends. It depends on the day I've got.
Yeah.
You know, if it's at the weekend and I'm like, I don't want to have to necessarily wait till Saturday evening to do it, I might run first thing and then a couple of hours later do the hour.
Yeah.
But in the week, it tends to be like evening time, getting it done.
Because I think,
and then off to bed.
I think I'd find it a lot easier doing it first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
I think because it's the same reason my training is much more efficient and executed much better when it's the first thing that I do.
Yeah.
In the morning.
Yeah.
Because I haven't started processing.
Yeah. And look, you know what? I don't think after this challenge I'm going to be doing an hour of space. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But what I'm hoping I can do, and what I'm hoping other people have seen from it, is finding 15 minutes or 30 minutes, if you're lucky, to be able to sit down and be in your own space.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to journal. You know, sometimes I'm writing a page and then I've got 2 dogs next to me. You know, we've got 4 dogs at home.
It's many dogs.
But 2, you know, a dog either side of me, and it might just be time just with the dogs. I've done a couple with Karen where we're just sat on the sofa. She's like, I'm going to have some space with you.
Yeah.
And we're having actual conversation without any phones, any technology. So I think like moving forward, I'll definitely take some of it into day-to-day life.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely flipped from that being the hardest part to now being the bit that I'm like, I've got an hour to. And
do you think you'd be carrying the same momentum that you are currently and managing the actual physical demands of this and its travel and its work commitments and things if it wasn't for having the space as well, if that makes sense?
It definitely helps. I'm not sure about the physical. Well, I mean,
even though it's difficult to work in, is it ironically making it easier to get through the challenge? Yeah,
I think so. And I think again, taking that into life, you know, we're all at high level stress. I think irrespective of what you do, what industry you're in, what you do for work, I think we're all operating at high level stress. And I also believe that's because of speed of technology and response to email, etc. It just comes in at 100 miles an hour. I think we all operate at a higher level of stress, pressure, and I think finding those moments is going to become more and more important. And if you can, again, compassionate discipline, find a routine that will work for you, use it and stick to it, because otherwise, you know, the pressure rises and rises and rises, and we know what that can potentially mean.
I think that's the absolute key, and I've spoken about this many, many times on the YouTube channel primarily, is just the importance of remembering that we are individual, and that's as fantastic as it is confusing in the sense that you can see Alex Hormozzi's morning routine, you can see Jocko Willink's morning routine, you can see Peter Attia's morning routine, you can see Andrew Huberman's morning routine, you can see your morning routine. that's the person's. It's not yours. And I think what we should try and do is we should try and learn, inform ourselves, try things, assess things, and then it's sort of hire fast, fire fast in terms of habits. And if something isn't serving you, move on. If something is serving you, implement it, and then try and structure it in a way that can be compassionately disciplined. And assess as you go. And I think a big key component of that as well is that we will evolve. Context and circumstances will change. And I've been caught out by this in the past a little bit mainly when training for triathlon versus not training for triathlon, because the level of habits and structure that I need to employ to be able to effectively train for triathlon requires a little bit more focus than it does for other things, which I think for me means that when I pivot, I kind of get stuck in the former settings and almost get frustrated that things aren't working the way that they should, or that things aren't firing in all cylinders, when in reality I haven't just taken a second to go, let's assess the current circumstances, and then it's kind of take the building blocks that you know are available to you to implement into your routines, into how you're spending your time, into what you're saying no to, into what you're saying yes to, into what you're doing at the weekend, into what you're doing after work, and not just thinking that because it works for somebody else, it must therefore work for you. Trial and error is the key, I think.
Yeah, and I think the other big thing with that is and this actually came from my therapist, believe it or not, but we are never a fixed state of being. So, and I actually did my own sort of piece on this a while ago, but the quote, "This too shall pass."
Yep.
We aren't fixed. So you're absolutely right that what worked a year ago doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work now, because life changes, things happen in life, moments happen that change your life.
Yeah.
It's kind of like figuring out those things that work for you in the current moment, in the current time, to give you the space to be your best, right? And to add to that, it feels like we're in a world where everybody's searching for happiness. I'll be happy when. I'm looking for happiness. I also listened to another podcast, and the guy said, when you go onto social media, it's somebody's birthday every day. And it's so true, right? But I think, rather, I think the narrative needs to be switched a bit to be like, well, rather than searching for happiness, which is fleeting, being happy, being sad, being, having tough days, having good days, they come and they go. But I think what we should be searching for is like being content.
Yeah.
I am where I am right now. I'm doing what I can do right now. And I'm putting the things in place that help me to do what I want to do right now.
Yeah.
And be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Because there will be bad days.
Yeah.
There are bad days. There will be really, really good days where you go, oh, that was brilliant. But it doesn't last forever. And, there's podcast after podcast of millionaires who say, well, I'm no happier making
when the
10th million to the
eight-figure
third.
exit hit my bank account, I felt no different.
Yeah.
It's the same old, isn't it?
But and you probably know this with challenges as well. You finish a challenge and you go, well, there's tomorrow.
That's why I think key part of all of my messaging that's come from the lessons learned from exactly that is I place so much more emphasis on the process of getting to the start line than what happens after
100%.
you get there.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of, especially in my space, hybrid athletes, which is a conversation for another time, the term has become diluted, shall we say. That space has become very performance-driven, very outcome-driven, and I personally, based on my own interactions with my own experience of fitness and what that's done for me in terms of my own contentment, but also the thousands of athletes we work with at Omnia, is most people are drawn to becoming more competent in different things is because it gives them a higher quality of life, not because the marathon time is the thing that is most meaningful. It's the actual self-progression that comes from getting better at running and what that opens up doors for you for. Whereas I think we've become far too outcome-driven. Social media is contributing. Yeah. Maybe I've contributed. Who knows? But I think the key detail is that I've learned, and I even experienced it recently with being much more sort of running metric-driven. It ultimately ended in injury. And I think that's a good thing because it made me sit back and go, you know what? were you actually enjoying that much, or did you just become obsessed with the forward motion and the numbers and the outcome?
Gave you a forced stop.
And thank goodness that it did, because realistically, I'm back training for triathlon. I've started messing around with a few more strongman movements recently, and there's no part of me that feels any sort of duty to train. Whereas when I was in marathon prep, I felt duty bound to train because I was serving the outcome, not myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I really want my position and content to be understood for is, process over outcome. And I do genuinely believe the way that people should interact with their training, especially because that's where this conversation was most relevant for me, is try and experience or view the lens of the process of getting to the start line as important as the end.
And I think for a lot of those people as well, for me, and I'm sure for you, like movement and training for me is one of those compassionate discipline elements that gives me space. Like I'm free when I'm training.
Yep.
Aside from this challenge, because I'm in my own head a lot, but you know, if I'm in the gym, if I'm doing at
least it's a prison of your own creation.
Yeah.
I guess.
But you know, the movement piece, you know, and you're as bigger advocate of this for me, it gives you something back.
Yep.
It gives you space, but it also boosts those good feeling, you know, hormones, endorphins. It creates space, it clears the mind. But yeah, the process, that's part of the process.
Yeah, and I think the most fundamental component of training for me and its relationship with happiness is that the world is very grey. Yeah. It's becoming increasingly grey. Yeah. It's very hard to keep up with what's going on today, tomorrow, what's true, what isn't, what's AI, what isn't. That's getting harder to decipher. I feel like an old man sometimes on social media. But training can be very black and white.
Yeah.
And no matter how grey your day is, figuratively speaking, you can get into the gym, or you can lace up your shoes, or you can get in the pool, or you can get on the turbo, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And you can hit the numbers that you said you were going to hit at the time you said you were going to hit them. And that is a big tick in the win box.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you can implement that in with discipline, with structure, and look, if you've got something to hold yourself accountable to further down the line that you can then perform in, enjoy the experience of, share with others, whatever it may be, that's fantastic. But I do think that we really should. I'm very biased on this, but I firmly believe that unless you're a professional athlete, training first and foremost should be enhancing your quality of life, whether that's through fulfillment, whether it's through, look, a lot of people get that from performance, but I do think it's quite easy to get lost in the sauce when it comes to making movement your medicine, quote unquote, because at some point, if it becomes so metric driven, then it doesn't give you what it used to, you are giving to it. And if you lose that, I guess, third space, to use that component, you've got work, you've got family, and then you've got your training. If your training then kind of becomes the work, then you're missing that third space. And I think that's where for you, creating these 60-minute gaps per day is great. For me, I've honestly, reflecting on things recently, this is where I've conscious decision the past 3-4 months, I've been allocating more time with Erin to just kind of walk the dogs or just be at the house and kind of not be doing anything. Yeah. But I need to get better. I need a hobby out with training, work, etc. that gives me a bit of breathing room. It was golf over the summer.
Because training but
golf can be as frustrating as it is rewarding. So
I know it. But training has become your life, right?
Yeah, it has. Yeah. And I think it began as my escape from day-to-day life. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the funny thing. It took me quite a few years to realise that. Many more years than it should have done, Simon. But wow, why do I feel so stressed all the time? Well, Saturday morning isn't now reflective, zone 2, wonderful, explorative time. It's work. Oh. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You should have figured that out a few years ago.
Differential, I think, for you, isn't it?
But I do love it. Don't get me wrong. I do love it, but it is just a case of, like, it for me, it's making sure that I really, really embrace and enjoy the experiences that I have along the way, like lifting the Husafell stone in Iceland recently. The joy that I felt there,
is brilliant.
It was just so unique. I
It's quality.
cannot put into words how
Yeah.
unique an experience that was. I've done.
But you could tell as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that you could, because I really wanted to convey
Yeah.
what that was like. But actually, when I put the stone down, I was like, I can never convey what this is like. This is even I've studied this like mad. I've spoken to everybody, and I still, when I did it, was like, wow, that is. I've done a really broad spectrum of fitness, and that is in a class of its own in terms of demand,
great.
which
That's
is really,
really
really fun.
Yeah,
And
that's cool.
I managed to have a couple of days in Iceland after that where we didn't have any set commitments other than get these things done, and I just really enjoyed having that availability to explore, move around in some new places, but also just kind of marinate in the achievement of ticking off
and I
something.
think that gets lost as well, right? We life is so fast paced.
Yeah.
You sometimes need to just stop and reflect, and I think that's not to keep going on about the challenge, but it gives me that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I'm going, right, well, I did the run, solo, non-solo, or I ran with someone, the conversation was great, but it gives me that, well, that's another day ticked off, and I'm kind of finishing each day going, right, what's tomorrow?
Yeah. And you've nailed it. Every day that you get through this, you've nailed it. That's the thing. So even if work goes horrendously, or you and Karen don't see eye to eye on something, or whatever it might be, flight's delayed, BA, thanks. Not just BA. most I feel like BA are catching more.
Other airlines are available.
Airline in the world. It can derail you, but it means you've still got your wins in, which is. Yeah, I've never finished a double training day and thought, oh, that was a shit day.
Yeah.
I've always thought, wow, I mean, whatever happened, you've done well there,
Yeah.
which is rewarding. And I've, unfortunately, because today's been so hectic, got 2 training sessions to do after this.
Oh, well.
The joys. But I'll feel great when I'm going to bed, because I'll have managed 2 training sessions. So there we are. So those lessons are all practice, because this is year 6 for you. So you've had a lot of time to experience these reflections, which a lot of people won't have even considered, which I think is great. And it means that you can be very self-aware. You can speak openly and eloquently about what you've taken from it, which is great.
Yeah.
But it hasn't always been that case.
No.
As it hasn't been for me. So year 1, when you first entered this world, what was the driving factor for you to engage in this messaging? Because I've obviously got my personal reasons. We all have personal reasons for engaging in this stuff, but who you were at the start versus who you are now will be a very different person. So who were you at the start when you first entered this world?
Probably not like hyper aware, I don't think. I think I've had my own challenges, and I think everybody does. We all have mental health, and I think had an interesting conversation again about this, that there's mental illness and there's mental health, right? There's diagnosed mental illness, and then there's mental health. We all have mental health.
I view it as a sliding scale, so to speak. That's the easiest analogy that I
it's a continuum, right, of tipping into mental illness and having mental health. And I think we all have mental health. I firmly believe it should be viewed the same as physical health.
Yep.
Like, just full stop.
Yeah,
there.
I do now as well. I used to very much not feel that way, but I do now.
And I think going into year 1, when we started talking about all this stuff, I wasn't hyper aware of the problem. Albeit that my main driver behind this is I had 2 friends that I played rugby with that had taken their own lives, sadly, in a pretty short amount of time. And that hit me pretty hard. I was like, trying to understand the whys and the wherefores. And I think it's pretty hard to understand that unless you have the understanding of it. And going into this space, I very quickly picked up on, the statistics, how wide the problem is. And then kind of like assessed my own like life and situations, and how I've not been great at talking. You lock things down, it creates pressure. I've had some really tough times. I don't think I've got to the point, the darkest of places, but I've been in some pretty dark places. And I think I just wanted to make a change. as small or as big as that can be, is how can, I've throughout my like school spot, I've always been rugby player, probably seen as someone who, the sporty guy.
Yeah, ticks the quote unquote, for want of a better phrase, traditional masculinity boxes.
Yeah,
shall we say.
and probably had quite a lot going on behind the mask.
Yeah.
Right, and I think we all carry a mask.
Yeah.
And I think, starting that process, and again back to the messages piece, getting real messages from people going, well, I've been impacted by this, or I've lost this person, or I've been close, and you've been one, right?
Yep.
I've been on the edge of this, me being one of those numbers. I think that's just planted a seed in me to say this needs to change.
Yeah. And what's fucking mental is that you can change. Obviously, you can't change it globally. You can't change it for everyone. But you can, just by virtue of being a little bit more open, a little bit more honest, having a few more uncomfortable conversations, could potentially prevent somebody from taking drastic action, which is an unbelievable opportunity to have, isn't it?
100%. And I just need to like caveat something here that we mentioned at the start. Like, I'm not an internet person, right? Like, I'm not comfortable being on camera talking about this stuff, but I also know the impact it can have,
which disarms it. Disarms
it, and it makes me go, if I can be uncomfortable for that 30 seconds that I'm speaking to a camera about either how shit my day was, or I'm not having a great time, or the grief that I went through with Vera, and the realization that life can be tough, and we can be impacted mentally by life moments or situations we find ourselves in, and that none of us are bulletproof.
No.
And I think if I can be uncomfortable for a short period of time to get a message across, and that help that one person or multiple people, we all should be better at it.
Yep, agreed.
And I think the internet specifically, but also in-person interactions, should be disarmed. Like, years gone by, it was like, buckle up and get on with it, right?
Yeah.
And this is where this has come from. Generational, societal, like, expectations. Men should be men. Buckle up, get on with it. You don't talk about your feelings. You don't show love and compassion. You don't show vulnerability. You get on with it. The world's changed. Like, we're seeing 1,000,001 different narratives of how life should be and what life should be. But the basics of like men having conversation, for me, and you said it's the easiest thing to change, I genuinely think it can be if men are willing to like just nudge over that hurdle of that uncomfortable feeling, and looking someone in the eye and going, mate, are you okay? Like, what is going on? I've noticed something's not right.
Yeah.
And then opening the door to be like, I've got goosebumps now, because when it was actually Russ from Movember came into work to HQ, and we did an on-stage piece, and he told the story of a lad who had planned his suicide, and he was out for a walk with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend just turned to him, put her arms around him and said, I've got you. And it changed his life. And like, it gives me goosebumps. It makes me feel emotional, because 3 words changed somebody's life. And that can be the same for all of us. And I think that the word conversation is again quite daunting. Like, oh, well, I've got to sit and I've got to actually tell my whole story. That's not the case. You can say as much and as little as you want in that conversation, but to be able to be vulnerable, and I genuinely think like vulnerability is the highest form of strength.
Yeah, agreed.
To be able to say,
And
I'm
it's
not in a
a
great
performance enhancer as well, I think, which often those most obsessed with forward motion, performance, metrics, money, aesthetics, whatever it might be, all these buzzwords that you can associate with Forex traders in Miami, mostly.
Yeah.
Those are often people that are the antithesis of this messaging.
Yeah.
When in reality, I think you can fast track learnings about yourself by being more vulnerable. In a business, any vulnerabilities you can view as something that you neglect and it's going to go down that way, or you can view it as a fantastic opportunity to go, that's where we're weak, we're strong in these areas. If we can bring that up in line with this, then we can see performance going this way.
Yeah.
You don't go, oh, no, that's vulnerable, we ignore that. Fuck, that's, oh, no.
Yeah.
We don't look at that. We don't look at that. Whereas if you can bring that up in the same way, strength and conditioning as a concept is designed to bring up vulnerabilities, weaknesses in athletes to make them perform better in their primary sport. Yeah. So the just logical fallacy of saying, well, no, anything that makes me feel vulnerable is something I'm going to avoid is only going to send you in one direction. And that is the crux of the mistake I made when I was younger. Yeah. And now I actively embrace and explore vulnerability.
I'm learning, I'm 40 next year. And, I'm learning all the time.
Yeah.
Like I actively see a therapist every couple of weeks. I make sure that's in the diary. And I've learned from day one of starting this challenge Movember piece to now that things change. Things have happened during those years that I started the Movember challenges that have directly impacted me. I've had some pretty tough times during that time that I've had to navigate. In fact, one during the Vera thing was over a Movember challenge, which I was in complete fight mode, and looking back, wasn't dealing with it at all. I wasn't dealing with it. I was in that fight or flight, and I was like, and action.
How much of a, maybe for want of a better phrase than crutch, but I'd say OD for me at points was and has been since a crutch, or at the very least a support mechanism that could help bring me back towards the middle of that continuum, so to speak.
Yeah.
So with Vera being a crutch for you, having to navigate the challenge of obviously losing her, whilst also trying to maintain this messaging outwardly, whilst also dealing with the challenge of that. Yeah. How did you actually start to confront and then embrace the fact that you were experiencing what you were experiencing? Because I mean, I'm aware that at some point I'm going to lose the pig dog, who has been a core part of my story and has been a reliable companion for me for 9 years now, over 9 years, which is wild. He's going to be 10 soon, which, you know what, none of us thought he'd get this far, but he's still strong. Kicking on. He needs to be more aware of the height at which it's safe for him to jump from, but other than that, he's doing well. But I often find myself drifting off and just not understanding. I can't comprehend how I'd feel when I've not been feeling good, not having him there. And I appreciate it's obviously very sensitive subject. It's a really key part of your life. But losing Vera during that time, how did you begin to unpack that and then move forwards?
It's a big question. I think I said it before, but so Vera had IVDD. She was basically paralysed overnight. Went into emergency surgery. I think a switch just went in me and was like fight mode. During the time that it all happened,
and care, I guess, as well.
And care. Like, what do I need to do?
How can I help
to get her right? I don't think I processed it. I don't think I showed a huge amount of emotion when it like happened. I was probably quite distressed at the time because it was a nice thing to go through. She had the surgery, and obviously the like damage, it wasn't irreparable, but it was nearly as close as it could be irreparable. We went through a process of like 8 weeks with no change.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. it's going to be fine. We're going to make this happen. She'll get back to, you know, and then it got to the point where it was like, well, the best you'll have is her tottering around, dragging her feet, you know, not really any type of like life for the dog she'd been as well. Like, you know, she'd been up Helvellyn with me round, you know, and pig dog's the same for you, you know, the active dog. And I had to make that call, and until I'd made that call, and
it was an infection behind her eye at one point as well.
So she also had an eye removed.
Yeah, which is
during the process.
It's quite common as a result of the antibiotics or something.
Well,
as a result
I think it was during surgery. She got like dry eye, which meant that she got a what's it called now? Like a cyst behind the eye, which meant that it was she was going blind again, and this all happened again within like 24, 48 hours,
which is horrendous.
So it was like
trauma process, isn't it?
It was like trauma after trauma. That again, I was kind of like, next thing, we're going to do this, she's going to be fine. It then got to the point where I was like, look, I've got to do this for her. And it hit me like a ton of bricks when, you know, we'd had her put to sleep.
Yeah.
That was then the moment where I was like, I'm in trouble here.
Yeah.
And I was. Like, it took me 6 months to get my head around it, and I still think grief. I don't think you ever. It's a bit cliche. I don't think it ever goes. I think you just get better at coping with it. And I think, I mean, I've got a tattoo over here, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think
mine's there.
Yeah, and I think about her every day.
Yeah.
You know, and in my tough times, even during these runs, I'm tapping that.
Yeah.
You know, as if she's by my side. And that was one of, and it's strange. Like, I saw her as a reflection of me, like inner me.
Yeah,
which is really strange to say. Like, the way I treated her was probably how I want to treat myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And also, I guess as an
that's
element
quite
of,
deep. That's quite deep conversation.
It's dogs, man. I could start crying now just thinking about that. Yeah, it's just dogs. I just love dogs. They're just the joy they've given me. I think honestly, the more I think about it, what does happiness look like for me? It's making enough money and having enough freedom to be able to buy a bit of land and rescue loads of dogs.
Yeah.
Well, we've be able to light money on fire without worrying about it.
We've got 4 rescue dogs at home.
They're all rescues.
They're all rescues.
Fantastic.
And, you know, I love them to bits. You know, and I've said this to Karen, like, they filled a gap. They're not Vera. I love them in their, and I think it's the same with any dog, right? You love them in their own way. And they're all different. And I miss Vera every day.
Yep.
But these 4 that we've got, I love them to bits. Yep. And they're there. And they give me what dogs give you.
Yeah.
Right? It's unconditional love.
Yeah.
Whether you've had a shit day or not, you go home to these 2-4 dogs that are there giving you all their attention.
Yeah.
As if, you know, they're like, where have you been?
Yeah. And why do you care about these trivial things?
Yeah, well, and it's true.
Yeah, they are the best calibration tools for me on that.
They give you perspective.
The reason I ask is not just to be cruel, but to how have you, the fact that Vera, I guess, could have been a bit of a mirroring tactic, or exactly you were treating her how you wanted to treat yourself. Having recovered from that grief, did you take actionable steps to not, I guess, behave the same way you did beforehand?
Yeah.
When she was acting as a bit of a crutch or a support mechanism, given that she was no longer there.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, but again, we've spoken about this, but vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable and accept that not every day's someone's birthday. Not every day's a good day, right? And things go up and down. But also the compassion piece of, you know, what am I putting in my day that gives me an element of release?
Yep.
because whether it's grief, depression, just a tough day, you still, and I've got to caveat this whole conversation as well that, mental health is always talked about as such a negative conversation, right? It's not. Like, mental health can be great.
Yeah.
Your mental health can be great, and it's okay to be that way. Like, it's as okay to be, well, I feel great, than not feeling great.
Yeah.
And I think it's like normalizing the conversation to be like, rather than going, I'm okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, what?
All good, mate. Cheers.
What's okay? What's good? What's not great? And just unpacking things a little bit from that. And I've definitely learned to be better at that. The therapy thing has come throughout this process. I've become better at actively having that in my life, actively using that and learning from it, because you learn from therapy.
Yeah.
It's a tool to, yes, definitely unload and offload a load of things, but it's also a tool to learn.
Yep.
Be like, okay, well, actually, yeah, I can take that on.
Yep.
I can implement that, or I can make that change. So I think I've definitely got better at that. But I will definitely say, like, the grief's still there.
Yeah.
It's 3 years on. 3 years in December that we lost Vera.
Yeah.
And like I'll never forget that day.
No, I can't imagine you will. But if not to try and put a positive spin on it in any way, but something you said there, which is the word tool, which is that all of these things you experience within everybody's individual context, because I don't ever want to be prescriptive with these conversations, and I've really enjoyed just sort of, we've not really said, right, what are the five things you should do to be X, Y, and Z. We've just had a chat, which I've really enjoyed. And I think that the thing that I always encourage people to view it as is, the more things you are presented with, the more tools you can equip your toolbox with, so that when you are in a time of crisis or dealing with something traumatic or whatever it might be, you've got a toolbox you can dip into to help take action to where you can try and improve that situation. And I think that's the thing I'm most grateful for over the years, from all of the training and all of the forced stops, all of the difficulty, all the things that haven't gone my way, because those are more tools. And the more tools I have, the more self-aware I am, and the better I'll be able to tackle the next tsunami that comes my way, to speak.
And that is the definition of resilience, right? That's what you build, resilience by the things that happen to you in your life.
Yeah.
And the resilience comes from being equipped to be able to deal with things that come in the future in life, right? Resilience isn't like right now what you're doing to be resilient. Resilience comes from having tough things happen to you and overcoming them to be able to overcome things that happen in the future.
But don't confuse resilience with rigidity.
No.
Is a big lesson.
No.
Big lesson that I've learned as well.
We aren't a fixed state, and this too shall pass. And that's kind of stuck with me with the whole Vera thing.
Is that on some trainers now?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it was on a pair of Adios. I can't even remember the model. I feel like it was on the back of a pair.
Possibly.
That'd be interesting.
I should probably know that.
That would be interesting. Yeah, I feel like I've read that on something recently, which is great, because I remember looking at it and going, "Oh,
yeah,
that's good." It's just a nice little thing to keep front of mind.
Yeah. It's a good sign.
So, well, Simon, thank you very much. Enjoyed that thoroughly.
You, thanks for having me. And that's my first ever podcast, by the way.
I'm privileged. Awesome. Well, you did very well for someone that's not comfortable talking. I guess it's a good thing the camera's over there and you're talking to me. No, don't look that way. Ignore that like the plague. Where can people go and find more details about what you've been up to?
On my Instagram, at Simon Davidson 9. And I think that's it.
Movember page. I'll put the Movember page in the link in the description.
Yeah,
we'll put that in there.
Link.
How many days to go? 26.
26 left.
All the best. Over halfway. You're over the hump. There we are.
Thanks,
You're going to grow some light from some darkness to circle it right back to what we were talking about before.
That's the plan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate.